Hello, my favorite people. It's good to see you all back.
Hi.
Welcome to the family. We are on Busy Talk. I can't wait to get into this topic. It's very interesting for sure. We are, again, glad to hear from you. But this is James and
Jen.
And of course, we've been married for 6 years and going on 7 next year.
This year.
Wow. Man, that's crazy. Anyway, so what's the topic today?
So, we're talking about, I guess you could say, the age-old debate. Younger man, older woman.
Okay.
Or younger woman, older man.
Younger woman, older man. Older man, older woman.
Younger man.
Younger man.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, it was a tongue twister there. It was a tongue twister there. Yeah. So, let's talk about it. So,
I'm interested.
So I was listening to this very interesting podcast that I've been following for the past few months. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm kind of into, I love posts, I love groups, I love podcasts, I love anything that generates some sort of conversation. It's interesting. I guess that's the psychology in me.
That's how we talk all the time. She looks at something and then she's like, hey, look at this. What do you think? And I'm like,
yeah. I'm always interested to see what people think. But yeah, so I was looking at a podcast. And this gentleman, he was saying that he specifically, this is the older man, younger woman. And he said that he specifically goes after younger women because they are much easier to deal with. They're much easier to deal with than women his age. And they're more agreeable and they just kind of go along with the script, so to speak, his script.
So they're more easily manipulated, is what you're saying? Or easily controlled? Or just simply someone who's easier to mold?
Well, according to his thoughts were they were easier to mold. But based off of, when they got further into the conversation, it felt like, yeah, this feels like you just like someone who's easier to manipulate. You know what I mean? Like that's what it feels like. It feels like you just kind of want, because he kind of used the thoughts of, oh well, women that are my age, they done already had a bunch of men, and they're what I call war vets. Like they've been through, a whole bunch of stuff, and they're difficult. You know what I mean? They're real difficult to deal with because they've been through so much trauma and drama with men that now when, I get to them or whatever, they're just not salvageable, so to speak.
I'm not going to say he's wrong on that. Now,
well.
I'm not going to, I may not fall in the majority here. I may not fall in the majority here, and that's okay.
I don't agree with that.
So here's why I say that I can't say he's entirely wrong. I'm not saying I agree with necessarily his reasoning, but I can say I can understand it. And here's why. Because when you're older, my opinion is that if you are someone who wants to be in a relationship where, there's less baggage, so to speak, a younger woman might usually be the person you would go towards. It's not to mean that there aren't older women out there who don't have their head on straight. And I'm not talking about just career-wise. I feel like a lot of times you'll hear a woman say, well, I got a job and I got this 6-figure income or whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's nice. That's great. Some people may or may not care about that. But, it's like if you've already kind of gone through so many different relationships that's kind of made you bitter. It's not easy to then be that guy who gets into your life and expect a fair shot. You see what I'm saying? Hold on. It's like if you get with someone who's younger, they may have had their experiences too, but certainly not necessarily. They may not yet be hardened into that bitter way that another person might be at. Also, a lot of older women that this person may have gotten in contact with may already have children. And if you are a guy, who's single and you don't have kids, you may want and you're entitled to want someone who also may not have children. It's okay to be with someone who has children. I'm someone who believes that, being a woman with children doesn't make you any less valuable in certain people's eyes. You're valuable regardless of having children or not. We're going to get that out of the way. But some men prefer, just like how some women would prefer their spouse, if they are the one who's single, if you're a man or if you are a woman and you are single and you feel like you've worked really hard to get to where you're at, and you worked that hard because you envisioned in your life a certain type of lifestyle, you have that right to then go and look for the person that may not have children as well. Because you felt, and you've made your personal life decisions to get to where you are. So you have that right to then go for someone else. And more often than not always, you're not going to find that with a lot of older women, because a lot of times a lot of older women may already have children. And with that comes a level of responsibility and just other, I don't want to use the word baggage, because
children are baggage.
Yeah, no, children are, not at all. But there's a certain level of responsibility and expectation. That's the word I'm looking for. An expectation that is demanded of you. Even if the other person says, no, that you don't have to worry about this, it still is an expectation that it is becoming of you. So because of that, I believe that, he has a right to then want to go and find a younger woman if that's what he's going for. Now, again, his intention, I can't say I agree with. I don't know entirely what his intention is. You have to tell me what his intention is. But I'm simply at this point saying I understand why some people would go for a younger woman.
Okay, so now that you've had your dissertation.
Yes. I stand on it.
So I disagree with that. And the reason why I disagree with it, well, I agree with some stuff, but overall I disagree with the thoughts of the whole he should purposely go after younger women. And the reason why is, first of all, I've had friends when I was younger that have gone through more things than grown women. I'm talking about grown women, paid the cost to be the boss. They've gone through that by the time they were 19. And they've had kids, everything else. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like, younger woman doesn't necessarily mean that, she's not what you call a war vet. You have a lot of these younger women who are going around with a lot of hurt and everything else. And it's not just relationships. You have to understand how was she brought up? How did she live? What was her childhood like? All of that stuff plays into the woman that she will become. So trauma is trauma, whether it's from your family or lover. Trauma is trauma.
I agree with you. I'm not.
Wait, you had your dissertation.
I'm just saying I agree with you. I agree. I mean, you're not wrong in that. That's why I'm not saying that it's not a this or that. It's they're more apt to go towards younger women because you're more likely to find that.
Right.
I'm not saying every woman who's younger has some women and stuff.
I don't disagree with that. But what I'm saying is that, so from this perspective, it's like you can't, like from his perspective, and a little bit of what you were saying in my disagreement is because, again, older women, what is your quality pool? What is your pool of women that you're pulling from? That's number one. That's the idea. What is the pool of women? Because just because you're older, and let's be clear, this guy was he was our age, 35, first of all. So 35, honestly, in my eyes, and maybe because, we're that age, is not really that. That's not what I would classify as you're not older. And the thing was, this guy even said he wasn't even established the way he wanted to be.
See,
he wasn't.
That's why I didn't hear all this.
And that's my point. That's what I'm saying. So that's the thing, because his point is, oh, men should be able to lead, and I feel like I can lead a younger woman, you know, better than I could an older woman.
I'm not talking about it
because, or an older woman from the standpoint of a woman his age, like a 30-something-year-old woman his age. So
before y'all crucify me, that's not what I said. That's not what I'm talking about. We're on two different pages there.
Okay, so then if you're on the same, that's what I was saying. Let me finish. Because it's like what this guy was saying, and based off of what his logic was and where he was, he's never been married before. He wasn't in a current relationship.
Okay.
And he wasn't even where he wanted to be financially, mentally, none of that stuff. So it's like, not to say he was broke, because he said he wasn't. He could take care of himself, and he could probably take care of a wife. But, you know, at the standard of where he wanted to be financially, he wasn't even there. So therefore, his younger woman was like 19, 20. That's what he was saying. He's like, oh, I want a woman that's like, you know, 19, 20 years old. That's essentially the age range. He said he doesn't go over 24.
I think
that was his thing. He doesn't go over 24. So pretty much,
I feel like his maturity level at that point is really no more than that of a
20-something, and that's my point. And that's what some of the people were calling him out about when they were having this debate with him. They were saying, like, well, it appears to me that you want somebody who you're going to be easily able to manipulate. He said that word influence, but the way it was like, no, you need to put verbiage to that, manipulate, because that's a 19-year-old who's fresh out of their parents' house, or who's living on their own,
or right out of college,
or not even right out of college. You're talking about 19.
Yeah, that's what, junior year?
That's high school, honey.
Is it?
Yes.
No?
That's right out of high school.
Let me think here. Hold on, wait.
Like, that's barely college. You go to college at 18, 19 years old. That's your freshman year of college. You're talking about 20. You're talking about 22. I graduated from college at 22 years old.
All right, so I was struggling with that for a little bit.
Yeah, the math. You're struggling with the math a little bit. So that's the thing. That's the thing. He said he didn't go over 24. That was his standard. So if you think about it, when you're 19, and like I said, what's your pool? What is your pool of women that you're pulling from? Because to be honest with you, at 19, I wouldn't think I would want to date a 35-year-old man, because you are like married, or you're thinking about marriage, you're thinking about, you know, settling down. At 35, you should be thinking about settling down. You should be, you know, in a different space. You're in a career chase, all of that. I'm just getting in college. Those are the years that I'm supposed to be.
But that's if you're the girl going to college.
Well, even if you're not in college, let's say you don't go to college, you decide to just get a job, or you decide to go to trade school or start a business. That's still a different space.
No, yeah, okay.
Than a 35-year-old.
I agree with you.
That's a different space.
You are in a much different stage in life when you are 35 as opposed to a person who is 19. What I'm saying is that a 19-year-old woman who is going to college may not necessarily always have the same mindset as someone who isn't going to college. I'm not talking about maturity. We're not talking about maturity. I'm just saying that the mindset may be different because your focus is maybe on different things.
So you're saying that and there's
some people who are right out of the city. Like there's some people who never even, you know, heard of college, you know.
Yeah,
but that doesn't make you immature. So I'm speaking about all of these different types of women. I can't only, you know, minimize it.
And that's why I was talking about
a woman. And he didn't from my understanding, he didn't clarify which particular pool of women he was talking about.
He didn't say the specific, like, oh, I'm only dating girls that are going to college, or I'm only dating girls that are not.
Because that's important to also consider.
He didn't say. He just said his average age, he does not go over 24. 24 is his cap off point. Yeah. So to me, that sounds like you probably are choosing the girls who may be a little young-minded. Yeah. They're easier to manipulate. They're, you know what I mean? Like, and you're going, and to be fair, at 19, it's no expectation.
Your mind is going to change.
You're not even fully developed to 25.
Yeah. By the time you even hit 25,
you're not even developed.
You're going to be on a whole different train.
It's not, you're developed, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I said no. It's not just influence. That's manipulation. Because the reality of the situation is, you want a woman that is probably going to accept things that a 35-year-old woman would not.
That from that point of view, yes.
You want a woman that is easier to manipulate, because at 19 or 20, she's gonna look at some of the stuff you do and be like, oh, okay, well, that's what older men do. Yeah. But a 35-year-old is gonna be like, no, that's not what we do.
We're not doing that.
We don't do that.
So I agree with that. That's why I was clear in the very beginning when I spoke about why I understood why men might date younger women. However, when I was referring to younger women, my perspective of younger women was up to around the age of 30. I consider
because you're talking about. So it was another gentleman that was on there, and he was in his 50s, and he said he does date younger women as well, but
or in their 30s. I would consider that range younger. Now, from my perspective, I'm 35 or whatnot. But what I'm saying is, from my point of view, anywhere between 35 to between 20 to 30 would be considered younger. But if you're older than that, then I can see how in your 30s, 20s, that could be
that. And so it was another gentleman who he was in like his 50s, and he's been married before. He owns his own business. He's established. And he dates younger women as well. But he even didn't agree with what this other gentleman was saying, because the reason why he didn't agree with that was because he said that my younger dating is in their 30s.
Yeah.
Which is a different space. That's a different space. That's completely 30 and 20 are two different spaces. And to be fair, he was more in alignment with being an older, because I've dated older men. I don't have a problem with younger women dating older men. What I have a problem with is when you're purposely trying to manipulate a situation. In order to make, I guess, yourself feel good, or just, or that your pool of women that you probably are going to be dating, they're not going to accept certain things, but this pool will. Yeah. And this is the easier pool to get in than being in this pool. And that's what the 50-year-old gentleman was saying. He was saying that his pool of dating, and he said it was just simply, it had nothing to do, it wasn't a choice, because he said he did date some women his age, but he was like, particularly, he just attract younger women. That was his attraction pool. And his younger women, again, are 30s.
Right.
Which is a different pool. That's a different pool of women.
I agree. I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, like I said, from the very beginning, I do think everybody's entitled to have their reasoning why they want to, be with someone. Now, obviously, your logic behind it, that's up to you. For me, if I were dating someone, it would really have been because, that individual. Or what? Personally, for me, I don't mind understanding why people, better yet, I don't mind dating older. It wouldn't necessarily be my first preference. But it's not something that would be completely written out of the sky, so to speak, and I can understand why some guys would. Do you think that guys are more inclined to date older women?
I definitely think that women are more inclined to date older men, because unfortunately for men, if you want a family, an older woman for you may not be in the cards, because unfortunately when you get older, your fertility wanes.
So if you take that logic, what you just said just now, can you then not also understand why perhaps some of these older men want to date younger?
Yeah, because they want viable women. And that's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with either one, honestly. I don't have, me personally, I don't think it's anything wrong. If you're an older man, and let's say you're in your 50s, you never had children, or you had children and your children are grown, but you're in a space where you're like, well, I think I can do this all over again. Yeah, you probably would date a woman that's 30 and below, because that is a more viable, space. You don't want to date women in their 40s because not to say because they're doing amazing things with science these days, but I'm just saying, from a standpoint of, am I going to have to definitely go to a fertility specialist at 40? Versus am I going to have to go in my 20s or 30s? Probably not. So it's when you look at it that way, I definitely can see why older men, and I don't have anything against that personally. I'm like, hey, if you want a family And you don't want to be forced too, because that's the other problem. Or not problem, but that's the other thing with older men, from what I've heard. They, you know, if you want to have a nice copacetic dating relationship where you can date for a couple of years, you know, wait a couple of years, and then, you know, acclimate to marriage and all of that, and then decide to have children, you're going to need a younger woman. It's probably not going to happen with someone who's in their late 30s, because if you date them, if you find them and date them in their late 30s, by the time y'all get married, they're closer to 40. By the time you want to spend a couple of years acclimating, they're in their 40s.
Yeah.
So it's like, and now at this time, you have to go to fertility specialists. You have to, not to say you can't have children, you can, but it's just going to be a little bit more difficult, and it just might not be optimal.
Yeah, and it's also more expensive.
It's more expensive. It's health. It's, you know, more health problems, possibly. You know, I mean, I know 40-year-olds have gone through labor without no problem, but to be honest,
that's the exception.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But to be honest, that's the first thing the doctors tell you, that your risk goes up. Your risk goes up after 35, so they say. But with that being said, it's like, if you don't want to deal with, you know, that aspect, or if that's not necessarily a deal, because I don't want it to seem negative, because, you know, everyone has their own space that they're operating in. So you operate in the space that you're comfortable with. So I don't want to say deal with. I just would like to say that if that's a space that you're comfortable in, and you're like, I want this for the tenure of my life now, then I feel like that's okay, as long as you're honest about it, and, you know, and you have what you're being required, you know, what you want required. Don't come to me saying, oh, you know, I want a younger woman, this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 but you don't have your stuff together. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I think that's kind of,
you don't have anything together. You just want a younger woman because you just want to manipulate them.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that's kind of where
that's the problem I have.
Because it's like, you can't have this expectation of wanting a younger woman, or just a woman in general, you know, or a man, you know, but we're talking about man to woman at this point. And at the same time, not even have your own stuff together. And yet you're talking about wanting to lead somebody. You know what I mean? I find
you're saying that they're easier to lead.
It's like, lead. What does that mean?
Where are you leading me?
You know, exactly. How are you leading someone? You're not that person's parent. I've always had a problem with that statement of men leading. The
men are supposed to lead the household, but not from that standpoint.
You're the protector of the home, yes. You are the facilitator of that person's, of your family.
Yeah.
You know.
That is what a leader is.
Yes, but when I hear people saying to lead,
okay. So you're saying to lead someone. Okay,
so
the difference
is not the
to
same
be
thing.
A leader and to lead someone.
Yeah, it's not the same.
Okay, I can see how that can be.
Right, it's not. They're two different things. The context is very different. And a lot of times when you hear these guys saying, "I'm going to lead somebody," or "I just want to lead," like, who are you leading? I'm like, where
are you leading me to?
Yeah, where are you leading this person to? Who's teaching you to lead? What does leading look like to you? You see what I'm saying? Like, what are those things that constitute leading in a healthy way? You see what I'm saying? A lot of times the idea is, oh, well, just because you got money, just because you're a man, that suddenly means that you are a leader. You see what I'm saying? For your home. When in reality, you couldn't be further from the truth. You know, the very fact that he's only wanting someone who's no more than 24 years old, it is kind of questionable at best.
I feel like when you're getting into the age thing where you're like, no, they can't be more than this. I feel like
it's silly because
that you're going in there with the motivation to manipulate. That's how I feel.
I feel like, and this may not be what the person is even saying, but I feel like it's like, oh, so you really don't care about actually finding somebody who's compatible for you.
No, you're really focused on making sure they're good and young and easy to manipulate.
And yet it's going to backfire because a lot of men who find themselves in that situation, when the women grow up or when the girls grow up to become women, they don't want the same stuff. Once you hit that 24, no, more like that 25, 26 year range.
Even if you hit to like your 30s or so, I think the problem is that you grow in different spaces.
And that's my point.
And you want a person, because even if the person is older, right? You can still grow with a person that's older, but it's mentality.
Again,
where is his mentality at is the question. And he's starting the relationship, he's starting the relationship off with a manipulation tactic.
Yes.
So therefore, this is going to be the tone of your relationship. And once you figure it out and you're like, wait a minute, I don't like to be manipulated, I don't want to do this anymore, then that's when that's the thing. You're not really growing together, because you're growing and he's just trying to kind of orchestrate your growth, and you're outgrowing him to a certain point where you're like, wait a minute, I don't like this dynamic anymore, because I'm realizing that this dynamic wasn't really healthy from the beginning, and I don't really care for it.
That's what I was going to say, which essentially is, when you hit your 24, 25-year-old range, at that point in time in your life, that's when you're starting to figure out, well, what do I want to do with my own life at this point? And the problem is not being that you're with an older man. It's what that older man's intention was with being with you in the first place. And so if that intention was not necessarily genuinely because they just loved you for who you are, and it was more simply because they wanted to still be able to go out and do what they wanted to do, by the time you get to that point and you're a mature woman, because not all women go through this maturity stage, but for a lot of more, but this is not a man versus woman thing. Obviously, we're talking about. No,
I was just saying that because of the individual that we're talking about.
Right, man or woman, for that matter. Yeah. But once you. But I'm talking about women from this point, because right now we're talking about an older man being with a younger woman.
Okay, understood.
So because she gets to that age where she's now hitting 25, usually around that time, or in most people's lives, man or woman, you're trying to figure out, what do you do with your own self in this world? And that is going to be a lot of emotional and mental change and frustration, especially depending on if you're with someone who is going to support you or wants to support you or not. And then when you start hitting that age of 30, where you're now talking about, what can I do to contribute to this world? That's a whole nother change of stage. And if the other individual is only like, well, I just still want to do what I want to do, and hey, you can still just only work under my house, but you don't have to worry about, contributing to society in any way. And I'm talking about for those who don't want to just be homemakers, which is nothing wrong with that. But if we're talking about women who want to be career women and go into the career world, you're just getting into it, and you're trying to figure out what is it that you're going to do. And if the person you're with, especially if they're older, which usually at this point in time means that they're more likely going to be traditional, they're going to probably be like, don't worry about that stuff right now. I'll just take care of it. I'm going to just pay for this, that, and the other, and you just stay home.
Yeah, I think
that's going to be a big conflict, which is usually what's already happened or is happening. And that's what's going to cause, that's why I said you're going to end up shooting yourself in the foot, because then they're going to leave you for somebody else who's on the same page that they are on. Whether it's an older person or a person of the same age at that point in time, it certainly ain't going to be you.
Yeah, because I do find that those relationships or those marriages that break up, it's usually because of that. It's usually because they're growing into different spaces, and it's usually, let me not say usually, but some of the time, it's the woman who's usually like, okay, I'm now growing this situation, because how it started was, oh, she's younger, so I can mold her, but the molding only sticks for so long, because when if she really is growing in a space, now you do have some who just be like, yeah, just take care of me, I'm good, I'll stay at home, whatever, and that's their choice, and hey, that's your choice, and that works for you, works for your family, great. But those who kind of want, and even if it is to stay at home more, but they just want to do more differently in a marriage, or they just want to do more things for themselves or whatever, I find that they typically, went out of the marriage because it's like, this is not moving in a direction that I want to move into. And then you also have to deal with the fact that if he's 20 years older than you or 15 years older than you, you're going to take care of him a lot sooner than what you want.
And do you really want to deal with that? I mean, it sounds good, it sounds romantic, but when you get there into that, that's
what I'm talking about is I'm talking about the super young ones. I'm talking about the 20. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This 20-something dynamic. I feel like when you get to your 30s or so, whatever, you handle that appropriately because everyone's grown at that point. So I feel like that's a different level, a different space.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a 20-year-old taking care of somebody, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a whole lot.
It's a lot.
And
you don't ever really
that's not something you want to think about in your 20s.
Yeah, you rob yourself of your youth.
Yeah.
I feel like, and that will ultimately lead to resentment. No matter how much you love that person, I can almost guarantee it will lead to some form of resentment because you didn't get the chance, or I shouldn't better say you didn't get the chance. You gave up your chance to be with someone who is older. And I mean, that's just the reality of the world. It's not to mean that it's better or worse. It's just simply, it is what it is. You're with someone who's older, they're going to, get to a point of probably needing assistance well before you will, which means that by the time they are in their stage where they're supposed to be having fun with people who are their same age and things of that sort and traveling, they can't.
You can't because you're taking care of a household, you're taking care of children, and you're taking care of a husband that is probably not able, or he's having issues, or whatever. Because the body breaks down, even no matter how healthy you can be sometimes.
Now, some older men,
they really do take care of themselves.
Yeah, some older men may
have that problem.
Yeah, or they may not want you to. Some will say, just please, just live your life. Yeah. So this is not a. Yeah, it varies.
It's not a one size
fits all.
Fits all type of situation.
Now, on the flip side of that, we've already talked about with older men dating younger women, and I don't even think we've covered everything on that aspect, especially when it even comes to sex, with that, because that's something you're going to have to handle.
Different.
The
reason why I say that is because you're a younger woman, right? And men sometimes, when they get older, they deal with erectile dysfunction. Yeah. So are you prepared to deal with that? I feel like if you were growing in a space with your husband, then that's different. I feel like, because you going through menopause, he going through, so you kind of, y'all the same way, but hey, this may not be happening the way we like. It might happen. We don't know. Everybody's body is different. You age differently, whatever. But those are things that you look at when you get older that can happen. Yeah. But if I'm in my prime and you're not in that way, right, or you're having erectile dysfunction, or you got things going on below, it's like, is that something you're really gonna be prepared to deal with? If it's yes, hey,
more power to you. Look,
you do it.
We're not here to criticize anyone. We're simply stating what we think are very, very obvious issues that happen and that we've probably even seen happen, and so because of that, we just like to speak the ugly, the good, the bad, the ugly. This is a part of that, And
those are things that happen that you do have to think about. And then think about it, if a lot of your friends are dating younger men and they're living their lives and they're, doing all of this stuff, and then you have the compatibility issue too. Yeah. He's in a different generation, like, are you okay with the fact that you may not relate on certain things? Like, when you get around his friends, you're going to be doing this. Yeah. When he gets around your friends, he's going to be ready to go. Are you okay with that?
If you're with that type of man.
Yeah.
Because there are some older men
who
are very young at heart. Some older guys are very young at heart.
Some younger girls are older.
Very old.
I'm just saying, like, these are topics.
But those are factors to consider.
These are factors and things to consider in that, from that perspective. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, wrapping back around to the initial conversation, I'm just thinking, like, this gentleman that was talking about that and all of that, I don't even think he's thought about those things, because I think from my perspective, from an older male perspective, it sounds good to be able to manipulate or have some sort of influence over a younger woman, because you're like, ooh, I get to mold her and make her exactly what I want her to be. Yeah. But the reality is that there are still nuances that I really don't think he's thought about, and the fact that there are things that after a while that she's gonna want to do that you may not, or you or she may be on this wave and you're on that wave, so you haven't thought about it, and I don't think she's thought about it because there are nuances about this person.
And she probably won't. I mean, she's inclined to. Because she's still young.
Yeah.
She's still just
She's not going to think about it right
mistakes.
now. She's going to think about it later. Whereas he may be thinking about it as they go along, and he's seeing things like, is this something I want to deal with for the rest of my... I mean, she may be easy to influence, but there are things that you can't influence up out of people.
Yeah, you can't. And that, again, at least from my point of view, lets me see a level of, at least where his maturity level is with that, because being a real man requires being able to, and there are different versions of men, for sure, but for the most part, it requires being willing to look at who you want to be yourself, where do you want to go in your life, who do you want your partner to be, and how you decide to go about not just providing and protecting, but being able to be an example to that family, to your family. It's a lot, but with that being said, it goes on now to the flip side. We've already talked about older men dating younger women, but now why is it difficult, I think, for younger men to date older women? Because that's a whole different dynamic. Similar in certain situations, you both get older, and as you get older, there are certain things you got to deal with, and are you ready to deal with those situations? But now you're dealing with a woman who may be in menopause, and that is a very, and depending on who you're with, it's easier
said than done.
Yeah, a lot easier said than done. And I think that as a guy who's younger, it's tougher or it's more difficult to be with an older woman. And again, you do what you want to do. It's not wrong. It's not bad. It's just that I think that there are considerations that have to be made, which are, as a younger man, you want a family. Are you willing to understand or accept that this particular individual
may not be
able to give you that, or she already has children?
I was gonna say that's the other counterpart too, because I think the debate with the older woman, younger man thing, she usually has older children. So these kids are probably your age.
They're your age. And are they going to respect you?
Or a little younger than you. They could be your age, a little younger, or older. So it's like,
how does that dynamic work?
Yeah, which is a different, and I think personally, that's a different dynamic than even dating a woman with smaller children.
Yeah.
Because the children are going, because you know with the smaller children, and you're like, okay, so how do I discipline them? Do I discipline them?
Yeah.
What's the relationship like with the father? How does this work? But now you're dealing with children that are like almost grown or age or older.
And if they're older, that's even worse.
Yeah, and so they're going to have a certain influence over your marriage possibly, because the thing about it is they're going to tell their mom, like, we don't like this, or we don't, we don't get along with him, or we don't like the fact that he's younger, or whatever. So that now causes tension in your marriage, because as a mother, she wants her children and her man to get along. And that's a difficult spot, even though they're grown or almost grown or whatever, that's a difficult spot to be in. You want your family to get along. So it's like, how does that affect you? How does that affect your marriage? That's a whole nother...
Right. And I don't want to talk doom and gloom, because the thing is, some people are in relationships already. So let's say we were to ask the question, what are the benefits then if you are an older woman to dating a younger man? Well, 9 times out of 10, I don't want to say 9 times out of 10, but it's more likely that a younger man is going to have more sexual stamina and willingness to
try and be more adventurous. Yeah, you have the sexual component, you have the fun component. Maybe they bring out a certain youthfulness in you to keep you young. You know,
and that goes for man or woman.
Yeah, either
man
one.
or woman.
Either
There
one.
is the benefit.
It's benefits
they
from
keep
both
you young,
sides. They keep you young, and they, you know, you have fun with them. Maybe before, the men that you were dealing with that were your age or older, they're
more traditional.
Yeah, they're more traditional. So maybe he's a little bit more non-traditional, and that gives him an edge, so to speak, for you. So there are benefits to dating a younger man. It's definitely beneficial.
Yeah, but I think from the guy's perspective, she may be a little bit wiser, more established, as well. But that's a double-edged sword, because the problem is her being more established. I feel like depending on the type of woman that you're with, they may be more or less likely or less willing to do different things as far as career is concerned. They're like, well, no, I'm already doing this. I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. And so as a guy, you may feel like you can't grow to be, if you are the type of individual who believes you should be a financial provider, and she's already where she wants to be.
Or the protector. I feel like the leader aspect in that, and listen, I'm not here to get into the male versus female, but I'm just saying, like, in the aspect of, is the man that we believe
the
that,
traditional,
gender roles where the man is supposed to be the leader, then it's like, if he's not to say that he's younger than you, that he can't, because he very well can. But if you're talking about women that are established, they've been leading themselves,
especially if you're high in your career already.
Yeah, and they have a certain, you know, or even just mentally, they've gone through things, they've experienced things, they've healed, they've done the work. That, you know, like, I find it a little difficult if you have a guy that may be financially stable, may have all those things, but he just doesn't have the same wisdom. It's a lot more of emotional,
it's a mental. So it's a bigger mental challenge, and to then get. It feels like as a guy you'd have to fight harder to get to where you feel your position should be. As we're referring to traditional male female gender roles, at least, it is more difficult, you know, depending on who you're with. You know, because for some women, they may just be like, well, I finally have me a person who I can spend my life with, and I'm okay with him, you know, taking the lead, you know, especially if he shows himself to be financially responsible, or especially if he's already in his career, or at least developing in his career, in a career that seems concrete. So like if you're already like a doctor, for example, or, you know, in the trades, for example.
Just any, you know, just overall his career.
His career, if it seems, but the reason,
where you want it to be.
But the reason I said that, though, is because there are certain careers that certainly do well, but starting off may not seem to be very solid.
Those careers could not be starting. The careers you mentioned,
sometimes
don't start off solid either.
That's true, but we know more oftentimes than not, if you've already passed medical school and you're already working at a hospital, 9 times out of 10, we know you're going to be on a path that is leading to financial security. If you are, for example, an electrician, an HVAC person, or a plumber, or we know more often than not, if you have the skills, you're going to be,
and you've had steady income and steady gain, then, you know, you kind of go on a path.
Exactly. But there are other careers that certainly may have a large financial gain, but it may take time, or it may not start out being as concrete and, you know, and steady.
Right now, you may have to make a sacrifice
and so
to get to it.
And so because of that, if you are being a guy and you're now dating an older woman, if she's basing it off of traditional gender roles as well, and she sees you doing this, it might be more difficult for you to be able to even make those leaps and chances, because she's going to see it as, what are you doing? So you don't get the chance really to make those mistakes, or be able to be as explorative as perhaps someone who's younger, and they're with someone who's younger as well, and you're both learning it together.
Yeah, I do think that the imbalance can be And I do think that in this space, gender matters, so to speak, because the thing about it is, an older man who's dating a younger woman, he's the one usually taking care of the younger woman. So it's whatever. But I do think that in society, if you want a traditional marriage, an older woman dating a younger man, if he's still trying to find his footing and all that, but she's already established, I do find that she probably is going to be a little bit more tougher on him to make like, you can't make those mistakes. You got to do this, you got to do that. And it's like, he's learning, that's where you found him. You found him in a learning space. He has the potential, he has the growth and all of that, but it just takes a little time, because that's
the time that took you to get to where
you are. It's going to take him that. I do think that it takes a certain woman to kind of understand that. Me personally, I've never dated younger. I really in my space.
Like, why haven't you dated younger?
Because what would younger be? What younger would literally be like, if I were in high school, younger would be a freshman. You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing with a freshman exactly? And in college, it was like, I'm going to date somebody in high school? Like, who am I dating in high school?
I mean, but as you get older, though, there's a difference. Like, when we were in elementary, high school, you talk about ages. You know, oh, well, he's a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That matters.
But then when you get to your 20s and 30s, it becomes a bracket.
30s is where the bracket starts. 20s,
yeah.
Because like I said, we're in our 30s. And I'm not even going to lie to you. I couldn't imagine dating anyone in their 20s. Because I'm just being honest. The 20-year-olds I know, I'm like, oh no. Yeah. And not to say that there aren't some that have their stuff together. Very well maybe. And I'm not talking about business finances. I'm talking about just mentality.
Yeah.
They very well may. I just haven't ran across the line. And me personally, because of what I see, I just couldn't see myself in this space, being like, oh, if I were single, in this space being like, oh yeah, I'll date younger. No. Yeah. Now if I get 50, maybe.
Yeah.
No, for real. Because the thing is, if I'm 50 and I'm dating someone in their 30s or 40s even, we're in the same space, essentially. You know what I mean? I'm just a little bit more advanced in that space, but I'm talking about the overall, at that space, he should be well into his career. He should, be well into his maturity. He's made his mistakes. He's had his growth moments. Yeah. He's, like all of those things that will help us, be together. But I think the missing component there is, what does children look like? Does he have children? Does he want children?